All right, I think we're live. You can see us, you can hear us. Yes, okay, we're good to go. So it's just a minute past the hour. We can get started. So thank you, folks, for joining us. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in any part of the world. Thank you for joining us here for the Telerik R2 webinar. This is the second webinar, and I'm so glad that we are taking a separate webinar here to talk about all the things that are so critical to your enterprise workflows: reporting, testing, Fiddler, and JustMock. So I'm actually joined by a host of wonderful people here. So why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? I'm going to be your host, the boring person with the slide decks this morning. I'm Sam Basu, and with me I have Rick, Eve, and Andy. So do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, please?
Hi everyone, Rick Hellwidge. I'm a principal sales engineer here with Telerik Progress Software. I work mostly with our .NET libraries and reporting tools, and I'm super excited to talk about what's new in reporting R2 this time.
Absolutely. Andy.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy Wieland. I manage the sales engineering team for our DevTools products, and I'm excited to show you some Test Studio and what we've been working on lately.
Super. And Eve.
Hi everyone, my name's Eve Terzillo. I'm a developer advocate on the developer relations team, and I handle all things Fiddler. And I'm excited to be invited here today to share with you guys some new things happening in that world.
Awesome. And folks, you have our social handles here. I missed out Andy's. It's Andy at Andy Telerik, so you know how to reach us even after this webinar. We do have a small army of folks who are supporting us, a lot of the PMs, the engineers, and other folks who work on the product teams. So they are here in the background trying to support us. So this is your hour. So let's all make the most of it. We are standing on the shoulder of giants, as they say. So let's start with just a couple of housekeeping things. We're going to go reporting first, then Fiddler, then Test Studio, and then JustMock. Okay, but let me just start things off with a couple of housekeeping things. First thing is we are all living in a pandemic all across the world, so we hope that you are safe and you are happy and healthy and trying to be as productive as we can. Now, as we get started, this is all about developer productivity. We have to keep our keep churning out software, quality software, and so many other aspects of enterprise workflows require you to do some of the things we're going to talk about, like reporting, like testing, and getting under the network stack. So we are all about developer productivity here. How do we do that? We have a full gamut of UI suites and frameworks that can help you out. We started yesterday. That was our All Things .NET webinar. This is today. This is all things productivity. And when we combine all of these things, I am told I speak way too quickly. So I'm so glad that we have some experts here who are much better at showing off the demos than I am. So we are taking the time out to talk explicitly about reporting, testing, and Fiddler and JustMock, because a lot of the times when I mention these things in passing, people are like, no, that's the thing I really want to hear the most. So I'm just so glad we have this 2 hours here. And tomorrow we also have, it's not the dark side like Darth Vader would say, it's JavaScript. It's all things Kinder UI for Angular, React, Vue, and jQuery. So come and join our folks tomorrow as well. But this is not all. This is just the webinar where we are in slightly formal shirts, but we are also kind of hanging out casually, showing you more of the things, kind of using some of the things ourselves, some of the new UI, some of the new features on Twitch, and we are doing it all throughout these 3 days. We have a full lineup of shows. We are doing each show twice to kind of make sure we are hitting folks across all the time zones. Maybe you're in APJ or parts of EU. We want to give you a morning and an afternoon to come and join us. So again, lots of Angular and React, lots of .NET, lots of reporting Fiddler. We did one session yesterday with reporting, testing, and Fiddler. Another one is coming up tomorrow, but today is the big webinar where we talk about all the things that our teams have done this release. So come and join us. If you have to run for something or if your connection drops, please don't worry. We are recording this in high def. And we'll push this out to our YouTube channels. And this is your time. You're giving us precious time of your day, so please ask questions. Whatever comes to your heart that is top of your mind in terms of priorities, ask away questions in terms of roadmaps, in terms of features. We are here. There's a small Q&A panel that you can ask questions, or if you're on Twitter, then use the hashtag #HeyTelerik, so we leave a breadcrumb and we can get back to you. All right, and then everything that we are going to talk about today, This is all the R2 release. So if you are new to our family of products, welcome on board. Hopefully you see all the things we can do to make you more productive. But if you are an existing customer, then please go ahead and update the bits. Every product team puts out what's new on our blogs, so that's where you can get the kind of the low-level details of what happened across each products. So like I said, no matter how you get your bits, be it through the control panel, be it through the NuGet packages or NPM, whatever, go get the hot bits for R2, and you can see some of the features that we're going to talk about today light up for your apps. Okay, now just two more last things. You always hear me talk about this, but we really care about your experience, right? Otherwise, if you are struggling, we are failing. So we care a lot about the docs. We care a lot about the demos that we put out. So you get real world code and you know exactly how to do things with our UI. And if anything that is you find that you really want in a control suite, please talk to us, feedback.telerik.com. And another thing we did that we are really proud of this release is we took the time, and this has been around for some time, dev warriors, we learn from each other. We are professional developers, so we look at other people's code, and if you're like me, you copy and paste a lot of code. And the forums are a great place to do that because it's not just us and our engineers, it's a lot of the community folks who answer questions. So we did a whole refresh of the forums. It's a fresh new UI, beautiful UX, which with answering threads. And we also give you a reputation for the things that you answer, so you can see your reputation kind of grow with time as you interact more. So come and hang out with us on the forums. So with that, let's talk reporting, because a lot of things happened this release with R2. This is part of Telerik Reporting, so I'm going to have Rick join me here to kind of set the stage first, and then, like I said, Rick is so much better at doing the demos, so he's going to walk you through. But before we start, let's just talk about what reporting is really quick. We have tons and tons of data, obviously, right, in this day and age. And unless we have a way of looking at data in a nicer way, we're going to miss the patterns and correlations, all the details in our data that helps us make decisions. And that's where data visualization comes in. This is what visualizes the data, lets us see through the patterns. And this is where reporting really helps, because without reporting, a lot of your enterprise workflows are just going to fall apart. Because no matter how cool your apps are, you need to be able to present those things to your audiences in the form of reporting. So again, nothing new here. You know that data visualization is key for you to tell your story and take informed decisions. And modern reporting solutions, like the ones we're going to talk about, it's all about the UI. It's all about the advancements that we have had with all types of data visualizations, infographics, charts, gauges, dials. It's all there for you to use. So let's keep on going with Telerik Reporting here. This is, and Andy, you have a brilliant one-sentence definition for Telerik Reporting, so why don't you go?
Sure. So Telerik Reporting, as I say, is a UI agnostic, .NET centric, framework-based infrastructure SDK for adding reporting features to your new or existing applications. Then you pass out when I'm reading.
That is well said. So yes, it is .NET based, but we really don't care about where you visualize your report. So primarily, when we talk about reporting, there are like 4 pillars that we're talking about. How you have some data, whatever be your data source, and you want to bring it together. We give you some really nice 3 different report designers, actually. One is baked into Visual Studio, one is a standalone designer, which Rick and me are very big fans of, and then the web-based report designer, which is coming up very quickly with complete feature parity with the desktop versions, which is not a small statement to make. So you build and you design your reports, and then we render those reports across a wide variety of technologies. So we really don't care what type of app you're building, web, desktop, it's all welcome. And then you also have export, which is how you kind of manage and ship your reports. So all of that is baked into Telerik Reporting. Now, with reporting, again, you are looking for those components. You're looking for those UI that really lets your data shine, and you can visualize the trends and the patterns, and all of that is baked into our reporting solutions. But that's not all, though. We also have a report server, which is a feedback that we hear a lot, where it's one thing to be able to generate and build your reports. So it's a whole other ball game when it comes to management of the reports. So this is a turnkey solution that lets you store, manage, authenticate, authorize, and do the full gamut of operations that you want with reporting and all of the automation built in. So here, if you look at Report Server a little closely, it still does all of the things like reporting does, but it lets you store, it lets you manage, it lets you authenticate and deliver reports with some automation to your users. So I'm a big fan of Report Server, but let's take a look at what is going on with R2 2021, because our teams have been pouring in a lot of love. So I'm going to mention a few things here and hand it over to Rick to show us some demos. Blazor. Blazor is everywhere. Blazor is everywhere when it comes to modern web apps. .NET developers are obviously excited about this because you may or may not want to write JavaScript. This is C# front and back for your apps, and Blazor is very exciting. It's not just for the web. We are starting to see Blazor for desktop and mobile as well. So Telerik UI for Blazor is here. I think they're up to like 75 plus controls now. A lot of UI love with Blazor. And if you wanted to, you can actually embed Telerik reporting reports inside of Blazor. You have been able to do that with the Blazor report viewer, just a few lines of code to render the reports. But this time around, we have a brand new Blazor report designer, which is a way for you to write a Blazor app and then hand it over to your super or power users to be able to create and design and edit reports on the fly inside of your web app, and you can enable that with just a few lines of code. It's amazing, and it's exposing all of the APIs that you expect from reporting in and as a Blazor component, which is super nice. And as Rick is going to walk you through, when you combine this with some of the AD authentication type things and what can be done on the server, what can be done on the client, you can really enable some powerful workflows. So we're excited about that. We do have web designers, which the web report designers, like I've said, have come a long way very quickly in the last 2 years. A lot of love that the team has poured in, and you can do just about everything just from a web designer standpoint. And it's amazing to think about this, where you're just literally doing it, the entire design and the creation of your report on the web. We have drag and drop support now, and Rick is going to show you how nice it is to just be able to drag and drop data fields with all the annotations and all of the expressions kind of built in. So you don't have to write anything. There's a new thing called the Swiss barcode, which is very popular if you're in EU. Kind of starting out with Switzerland, it's a QR bill technology which lets you issue and get paid on your invoices. It encapsulates all of your financial data, and you don't have to do a thing. It's just RAD barcode that's just kind of built into a lot of our UI components, and it works with reporting as well. And it gives you compliance with any regulations that you have. So exciting things coming up with both the web report designer and newer components. And then that's not all. We have some brand new themes if you wanted to light up some of your reports. Some of them use actually Kendo UI components in the way we design our reports. So there are some Kendo UI themes you can use. There's an Office 2019 and a Blue Opal. And I know Rick is excited about this. There's a brand new VS item template that lets you drop in an HTML report viewer in your web apps for .NET 5, for .NET 3.1, or framework that lets you just light up a report with a little wizard that we step you through, and just in a few seconds you have a brand new report that you can view in your web app. So very excited about that. WPF is kind of the workhorse for a lot of desktop applications. We have a report viewer in there that's getting the dark mode. So WPF UI component suite got material and VS 2019 themes last release. They have updated that to a dark mode support now. Dark mode is everywhere. I don't know, Rick, if you're a dark mode fan. I'm kind of in the mix here, but you can now render reports in dark mode as well. And there's a little bit of a big news when it comes to our .NET support. So with that, why don't I have you take over, Rick, and show us some cool stuff.
Great, thanks, Sam. Happy to. There's so much new stuff in R2 in this release. It was very much a challenge to choose what to demonstrate. Let me just.
So you should be a presenter. Just share your screen.
Yep.
There, you see it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think the biggest line items for R2 when it comes to reporting and integration, and I know where the team really spent a lot of late hours working, were around the Blazor integration. And we definitely heart Blazor here at Progress, and the web web-based report designer. So those two components, definitely stand out at top of the page. For anyone who isn't super aware, Blazor is a component-based language, based around web components. And as a company that makes, third-party components, that's something that's wonderful for us because it lets us do really cool things, the way the framework had intended them to be done. And one of those is the way we were able to integrate the web-based report designer. Everyone should be able to see my Visual Studio, which, to answer Sam's previous question, yes, it is running in dark mode.
I see that. Maybe Rick, just bump up the fonts.
Okay, of course. I'm sorry. I always forget to do that. Let's see. How does that look?
Maybe a tad more, if you can.
One more?
There you go. That's perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the web-based report designer, the way we were able to encapsulate this in a Blazor component means that the entire work of adding the report designer, which we'll be seeing in a moment, to an application consists entirely of this one using statement and this 5 lines of markup here, and maybe one style that you set up just to define the sizes and padding. This is insanely simple for how little code is needed to implement something so powerful, and everything's sort of baked into the interop for Blazor to make this possible. So the fact that you can just take these 5 lines, copy them into your application after doing some background work of setting up a couple REST services, and have a fully configured report designer is something that is a huge time saver, especially if you need to add this on more than one page in your application. So we definitely have that. And I think what we should probably do now is just go ahead and launch this and see what it looks like. So 5 lines of code for the report designer will give you, when it loads.
And it looks like you were doing it from a Blazor project, but you're doing it like on the, I mean, you have a client side, you have server side. This is like the server side backed thing, right?
Yeah, well, this is a Blazor WebAssembly project that has the ASP hosted modeling turned on.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, there's sort of 3 solutions for Blazor. There's Blazor Server, and then there's Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor WASM, and that comes in kind of 2 flavors: WASM hosted and non-hosted. The non-hosted lets you do anything you want for servicing your resources. It doesn't have to be ASP.NET. You can really service them from anywhere, PHP or whatever you want. And then the front end would handle everything else from there. But for most people who are doing .NET stuff, you're going to have a .NET backend too. So this is the Blazor hosted model for WebAssembly. So yeah, the report designer here. So that 5 lines of code gives you this entire interface. And anyone that was with us yesterday or remembers my ARD1 presentation might have seen my Chuck Norris joke generator before. I figured this would be a good starting place. Honestly, I had not looked at this report since the end of the R1 webinar series. And when I started getting ready for this series, I took the report, I dragged it into a folder, I opened it in the new R2 designer. It did its automatic upgrade behind the scenes, and everything just worked perfectly. So it's great when things work and there's no work to do. So this is still a good starting place for our reports. So we can go back and yeah, the designer here is, as you mentioned, Sam, very rapidly approaching feature parity with the standalone report designer, which really is for day in and day out report writers. The standalone designer is probably going to be your workhorse tool. It's a platform tool. It's extremely fast. It's slimmed down to the bare minimum. It runs in it uses the WPF design surface and renderers. So it's a beautiful tool, very fast, but it is a compiled executable. And if you need to distribute that to an end user to design a report, you have to send them an executable. You have to send them a configuration file. I'm sorry, it's early. And it's
Yeah,
only
and
two
then
files, but they have to have it in running.
you have to have it installed. But this is like incredible that like you have the whole designer with just those 5 lines of code. Like you have the report canvas, you have all of your components in your Explorer on the left, and then you have all of the properties. Like you can do everything as a power user, just design and create your new reports here.
Yes, everything, and we're gonna create a new report right here in the web designer to show how easy it is. So we have from the menu, so that we have the whole file new experience. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we're going to create the stooge duck report, which is just a little sample report that I've been creating for longer than I care to mention. That is good for simple data and showing off a couple features. So what this did in the background when I did file new is the virtual folder for the application, which contains all of my pre-existing reports in that file format. The web designer used a file stream to create and save that file to this folder. So now we have a standard report document in the folder that can be opened both in the web report designer and in the standalone report designer. Uses the exact same XML-based markup. So you can now interchange between the two, as the need arises.
Yeah, and I like that because like it's just being saved as any other report files. So you can enable workflows where somebody is coming in and doing stuff in the back end, just doing more with the reporting design, and then you get to have the same functionality on the web.
Absolutely, and that's that ability to have that flexibility, is something that makes this a much more usable tool. So the big thing we added, and this is what probably limited me and a lot of people from using the web report designer before, was drag and drop support, which wasn't available in a lot of application frameworks. We actually had to sort of invent the wheel for this and write our own drag and drop library. But now you can take any item from our components toolbox, for example, a text box, and just drag it into the design surface, and that will automatically create the item for you, in this case, a text box. You can move the item around using drag and drop instead of having to type in coordinates and sizes explicitly. So this makes it a much more approachable tool. And let's see.
It's still remarkable to me that you're doing this on the web canvas.
I know you forget that it's not a platform tool after a moment. And you can do all of your styling in here as well. You have your full properties available to you on the side. You can adjust the font. I'm just going to make this a little more legible and center it and put it to the middle of the text box. We'll leave the default colors alone. And also for data, you have all of your data sources that you can drag and drop into your report. In this case, I'm going to be using a CSV, comma separated value data source. And you can select a file from your desktop, and this will upload that file to the server automatically. You have the wizard built in. You could also paste in your CSV as inline text if you wanted. It'll go through the same wizards that you would have in the platform designer for small files. You can embed the CSV directly in the report document. Set a few properties. We're using all default CSV properties, so there's nothing to change there. Designate which fields are integer and which ones are strings. Quickly preview your data. Looks good to me. Hit finish, and that should have done everything for creating the data source. And now, just as you would in the platform designer, you take that data source and you associate it with the report itself. And this is probably a good time to save the report. So saving and synchronizing work. And this is easily, if you wanted to go back to a different report and look at something and then come back into the one you just saved, everything is there and synchronized and easy to switch between. And you can see in the Explorer section, we have the fields in the CSV that we just created. So for the same thing, for the Explorer fields, you have one more trick up your sleeve. You can just go directly to your data fields, drag them into the report. And now what it's going to do is create a similar text box as before, but it's going to automatically do the data binding and expressions for you. So it will associate the field that you selected with the data source and put the expression into the text box and populate all of that for you. And you get a very basic report, right out of the box. So, I mean, just the drag and drop definitely increases, your productivity time. And, the speed at which you can build a report now is on par with the standalone report designer, and in my opinion. The slightest learning curve in just the property navigation on the side panel, but after you build your first report, you're going to learn where everything is here, and every feature, to the best of my knowledge, is supported in both designers. So this really gives you quite a bit of flexibility. So let's use a bit more of that flexibility and open up my standalone report designer. And let me actually just open on my other screen. I'll open double click on the report. I'll bring this over here so you guys see what I'm doing. I'm just going to double click on that report file and let that open for me.
While you're doing that, Rick, Alex Corentang in the chat room is asking if we can have some of these demos available. The source code for you to just turn on that Blazor report viewer, that is literally off our docs. There is just nothing to change here. But if you're really into Ducks and Stooges, we can work with Rick and get this up somewhere. Yeah, and we normally send out like an email, or we can put up a blog post where we can link it up to a GitHub repo maybe.
I'm just waiting for the report designer to open. I think I might have a service that locked up on me. I'm just checking off screen my task manager real quick. We are doing this live, so of course there's going to be something. Let's see.
I know it works because you did that thing for Twitch yesterday.
I know. See, and I had the report designer open. I had to be fancy and close it and say, oh, let me open it directly from the file. And I think I might have locked up a service with everything running. Come on, you can open.
I have changed network settings while we are live on a webinar. So,
yeah, that must have been. You had to reinstall Visual Studio once too, didn't you?
I did.
I'm just looking for the service so I can kill it and restart. But if I can't find it quickly, we can do an unplanned test and do everything in the web report designer. Which we might be doing. Let's see. Okay, one last trick. I'm going to try. Going to my PC.
Could the report file be locked?
It shouldn't be. They're not locking files. So when you save it, it serializes. But we can navigate away from that page just to see. Let's go to R2 and report designer. Yeah, some resource I need somewhere. Decided that it was gonna be problematic today. I'll probably have.
No, I was just going to say, like, you have the report file saved. You were just going to try to open it up in the standalone designer, but you have the Blazor stuff working.
I do. So we'll go ahead and we'll use the tools that we have. Of course, at some point I'll have about nine report viewers pop open in front of me. So let's go back to our report. And what I was going to show off was grouping with the same report. We'll just make sure that that's still working. Okay. And you can easily add groups to your report, similar as you would in the standalone designer under the data section. And you can create a new group and add a group category. In this case, the expression is the field you want to group by. So that is the type of item. And let's see. double click. There we go. It's funny because it mirrors some of the interactions we designed to mirror the standalone report designer, which are a little different than what you'd expect in a normal web portal, but we intentionally did that for people to easily migrate. So things like double clicking on an item. I think that's where I made a mistake yesterday, was I single clicked on something and got all confused. Okay, so we have our expression by type. We'll hit save. And this is going to create a group for us automatically with all the basic settings. We have our group header here, our group footer here. We'll take our type field, move that into the group header. We will move a couple items around. And since we're not using the footer, we will just go into appearance and we will turn off the visibility for the group footer. And we can preview this report. And you can see now it's grouping by, yeah, yes, it worked. It's grouping by the category. And I think one more thing that I can show off, which I didn't show off yesterday, is conditional formatting, which is also added into the web designer here. So you can, I don't know about everyone else, but when it comes to Hue and Dewey and Louie, I always forget which one is red, which one is green, and which one is blue. So we can take those characters and we can add a filter, and the expression for that is going to be fields.name, because we're going by their name, equal to Huey, which according to my notes is the red. You can select your background color from the nice color picker, find a nice red, somewhere in there maybe, and save. And if I did that correctly, yes, you get a formatting rule based on your data. This is just, it's a very simple test, but you can definitely do any type of formatting you want. This is the same system you would use to do alternating row colors or highlight in a financial report to make a negative value red, for example, or highlight ranges or anything like that. So very, very simple rules to set up, and you can save. That's already saved because I previewed. Yeah, so I think
you showed off the Blazor report designer, right? And then we also looked at the drag and drop. How about the Swiss barcode?
Swiss barcode. That is something that I didn't even know about. I don't know about you, Sam, a few weeks ago. So Swiss barcode, to my understanding, is a way to encode payment systems and payment solutions directly into a QR code with sort of a layer of encryption and certain confidence intervals built around it. Because it has certain extra requirements on it. It's a slight one-off from the regular barcode. I'm learning all things about the Swiss barcode in the last couple of days. Things like the sizing and the padding and the resolution all have to be within certain metrics. So I think we implemented this pretty much across most of our UI libraries all at once, including reporting. So the Swiss barcode is a simple drag and drop, and it has for this item in the bindings, you can set how you want it encoded with the bill data. So you can see here that it uses, I think, a standardized model, Sam, for what it really expects for data. I think that's pretty much an industry standard. So if you're implementing one of these, your payment system would provide this data for you, I would imagine, and you can just put it into these fields here via normal data binding techniques, and it'll generate this barcode for you. And actually, I noticed last restaurant I went to, the bottom of the receipt had a contactless Swiss barcode on it. So I got to actually try one of these live, and it worked. It worked really well for you able to pay the whole receipt and look at everything directly on your phone, and didn't have to take your wallet out at all.
And that encoding takes care of your regulations, the compliance to those regulations, because this is serious stuff. You don't want to miss them.
No, I imagine not. So yeah, that all seems to be very well handled. And I mean, as far as getting this one, it was just drag and drop from the component panel onto the page. So couldn't be any simpler there.
Right. Very cool. So it's amazing that you can do all of this stuff on the web. But then we also had a new VS item template that I know you're fond of.
Yes, the item template. Okay. To do that, let me close this application and we're going to stop this one. And I'm going to open a brand new instance of Visual Studio 2019 latest release. And once that spins up, first I'm just going to create a new .NET Core, ASP.NET Core .NET 5 project just from the template menu. This is just going to be a standard empty core project, nothing fancy. This doesn't even use any of our libraries either. This is just what comes with Visual Studio. So next, .5 and create. Okay, so like we talked about in the Blazor solution, there's a bit of bootstrapping involved in getting sort of up and running. You have to create a RESTful service, and it's all copy and paste from our documentation. But I mean, you just have to go through, that 10, 12-step process of creating a controller, naming it, a specific name, creating as your service a web API service, copy in the code that we give you and the inheritance from our controller base, and then you have to do some dependency injection into your startup file, and again you copy the services that we provide and directly in there, and you add the usings that you need. So once you do all of that and you have that set up, it's really done for you. But in what's going on with Visual Studio here?
It's Wednesday.
In .NET Core and in ASP.NET Core and .NET 5, you're able to make that entire process a little more seamless for you, assuming you're able to open Visual Studio.
You probably have a few too many instances open, or
yeah. I mean, it two, so yeah. Okay, let me just see if I can try that one more time.
while you're doing that, one of the things our reporting teams takes, and really all of the teams, is we take pride in the support. So as you're using these new features, if you don't be stuck on anything, talk to us, create a support ticket, go to the forums and talk. And a lot of the engineers who build this stuff are the ones who hang out there in the forums or respond to you on the support ticket. So don't ever be stuck. And it's very likely that what you're encountering is something that somebody else already has. So get some help quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Our technical support engineers are awesome. I used to be on that team, so I can definitely speak to the fact that we're all huge nerds. And after our session yesterday, the manager of the team actually pinged me and said, I had this really interesting case with reporting and all these different things, interconnectability. So, can you help me get a little proof of concept set up? So we all work together. And it's we all love the getting into the weeds on some of the more corner cases and edge cases and figuring out where the soft boundaries and the hard boundaries are around these tools. Okay, it worked. So we have a .NET 5 ASP.NET Core solution out of the box, nothing special here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add Telerik Reporting framework, soup to nuts, sample report, services and report viewer, HTML5 based report viewer, everything needed to set up your report. And I'm going to do it in under 30 seconds if you want to time me, Sam. Okay.
All right. Well, so, it's not just you, it's Visual Studio. Let's see if it
okay. Yes. We're hoping. Okay. So we're gonna start, right click, and we're going to go add new item. And we're gonna have the new item template here. We're gonna look for reporting. REP will get me there. R2 2021 and hit add. We're going to use all defaults. Build the project once. We want a REST service. Yes. We want a sample definition. Yes. We don't need accessibility for this demo. So finish. It's going to do some cranking in the background, generate a few files, and done.
Nice. That was under 30.
So
Very
what we
cool.
got here was our controller with all the implementation needed, including some optional stuff you could set up for email. We got our reports folder, our sample report. It did all of the dependency injection and services for you, so nothing to worry about in there. It added the endpoints that you needed to add. And again, none of this is hard, but I mean, it's all in our documentation, but this does it all for you. And we created an HTML file, which is hiding under www.root here, which contains our HTML5 report viewer. Here we go. And again, this is something that we would give to you in the documentation, copy and paste in, but just I want to put this, in comparison to the Blazor component that we looked at earlier. This is 85 lines of code, and including some head and body stuff, and a lot of comments, but it's a full page of code with some references and styles and scripts for the report the report viewer. Doing this as a drag and drop component or a copy paste component makes this much simpler. And I'll tempt fate and go ahead and run this and show that it's it did create a fully functional application. And let's see which monitor did that open on. There we go. Okay, so it's going to bring us to the root, and we go HTML5. And we need to put our sample report, which includes a couple nice reporting features like drill down, report actions, report parameters, and pass through dates and fun stuff. We advance this a little bit and select a new date. You see it's going to re-render the report and embed that date in it. So just our standard sample report. But yeah, so that's a fully functional reporting solution in under 30 seconds.
Yeah, very, very cool. All right, so Rick, what if we give you 2 more minutes here to wrap up with reporting? What else cool do you want to show off?
Oh boy, 2 minutes. Okay. So as you mentioned, we have a lot of new themes available for the report and the templates. But the other coolest thing which I want to show is let me relaunch this application real quick. 2 minutes. So in previous versions of Telerik Reporting, if you wanted to disable a specific report format, such as rendering format, such as PDF, you could certainly do that, and you could do it sort of globally across your entire reporting suite. What we've added is the ability to, within a report, turn off or change a specific rendering format for that individual report. So for example, if you have a data report that you don't want to be able to be exported to PDF, you can turn off PDF rendering, and then that option won't appear in any of the export menus. You can also add settings into that feature so that those settings will pass through into the final rendered PDF. I don't think I can demo it in 2 minutes, but it's here under runtime settings, where you can just select your rendering format, PDF. You can turn off visibility. You can change the name of that format so it will appear differently, and you can embed something like a document author directly into the PDF, so that when it fully renders through and you open it in your PDF viewer, your author name and any of that information will be encoded in the PDF automatically without the end user having to do anything special. And that definitely makes the tool much more powerful, that you can dial in these settings very granularly on a per report basis without having to write any code at all.
Yeah, very, very cool. And was it your Blazor project that you showed me something really cool, like the properties and like what runtime you're using?
Oh yes, thank you, Sam. I completely forgot. So I have one last surprise. The really observant among us may have noticed that this is actually running in the Visual Studio 2019 Preview Edition. And the reason why this is running in Preview is this entire solution was built and executed it under .NET 6 Preview 3. And that worked seamlessly out of the box. And I think Preview 3 came out, what, about a week ago, maybe, or so?
A little more, but I mean, it kind of shows you how bleeding edge things are, and it just works. And I mean, .NET 6 previews have been coming out like almost every month since like March or so. We are almost at the cusp of like Microsoft Build, which is where they're going to show off all the latest things. And this is still like a long runway till November when .NET 6 is out, but it kind of shows you that all of our stuff works right now with the latest and greatest preview. These are all previews, so don't use them for production yet, but it works.
Yes. I mean, we don't recommend them for production at all, but yeah, it just shows that we always aim to have sort of 0-day support, or in this case, negative day support for new, .NET frameworks. I know the engineering team, as soon as a new preview is available, they're downloading it, they're trying their solutions, with it, and seeing what breaks and trying to find ways to fix it. But a lot of this stuff just works out of the box, and that's just really great for keeping your application modernized. Which, a modern application is a happy application.
Absolutely. Now, we have a lot of things to cover, but Rick, how about you take one quick question here? Bob Perrett here from the chat room, which may have already been answered, our engineers are on, but how easy is it to pass parameters from Blazor to the report designer or viewer, such as like the current grid filters, like passing parameters from a Blazor app into the designer or the report?
To answer that, let me just go ahead and run my application one more time, because that's what I'm actually doing to load reports. So Blazor makes the double-binded, two-way bound parameters very easy. So you can see here, this is just a regular input and a refresh button, but this input is bound to two things. It's bound to my label up here, which is just an H1, but it's also bound to the property which controls which report that I'm rendering. So I believe it was not duck stooge, maybe. So or stooge duck or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Whatever one I type, it's the opposite one. There we go.
Yeah,
so it's very simple. So this is passing in an external parameter, and as we looked at in the bootstrapped demo that we got with our .NET Core project, internal parameters are built into Telerik Reporting, so it's very simple to pass parameters around. Let me go to the report viewer page. So yeah, this is as simple as Blazor makes it. You just have your string here for a value, two-way bound parameter, and you can pass that into a report source. So very, very, very simple. Everything is, because everything is strongly typed in Blazor, in our code section, this is all incredibly simple to implement.
All right, you ask your question, Rick gets to your whole demo. So Rick, thank you so much. I know we are all standing on the shoulder of the reporting team that does amazing things every release. So thank you, Milan, and the entire reporting team. Yeah, that's awesome stuff. Rick, anything last things to mention before we switch gears?
No, I don't think so. I think that that covers it for me.
All right. So folks, I'm going to take things back on here, and the reporting team had a quick poll to ask, just to kind of make things a little bit interactive for you. So let's go ahead and have a quick poll of the things you're trying to build. And this is kind of a little bit more generic, not just with reporting, but where are you all in terms of your apps and where you want to see reporting work, framework, 5, 6, where are you at? Tell us quickly. And again, this doesn't change any decision making. We're just curious, like where your apps are in overall. So going once, going twice, going thrice, and done. Look at that. That's a good split. That's exactly I think what we were expecting you folks to be in. Again, .NET Framework is going to be there for the next 10 years. But .NET 5 is also here, .NET 6 is coming up. So again, we can live happily, we can coexist with all of these things. So very cool, very cool. Rick, thank you so very much for showing us reporting. All right, so let me see where, yeah, thank you. Let me see where I'm at. Okay, you are still seeing my screen, which is perfect. So at this point, let's go into Fiddler. And I'm gonna ask Eve to come back on. There you go, Eve. Hello.
Hello.
So, we finally get to talk about Fiddler. It is the thing that so many of us developers kind of have grown up with. We have used it forever, and we always kind of fly right by it during the webinars. I'm just so glad to have you on to kind of take us a little bit in depth with what's happening with Fiddler, because apparently it's a lot, right? So I have some of your slides here, Eve. Let's kind of walk through and talk about this together. Right.
Sounds
so first
good.
thing is, take a look at Fiddler right now, folks. Telerik.com/Fiddler. You're going to see a lot of different things. So should I go to the next one where you talk about all of the Fiddler portfolio and the whole family? Eve?
Yeah, I think that's a great one to show.
All right. So walk us through here. What's happening?
So one thing, like you mentioned, people are familiar with Fiddler, but some people are unaware that it's really expanded to a whole family of products. And that's what's interesting in that we're bringing awareness to, is that we have Fiddler Classic, which is a Fiddler that has been around, but has also evolved. But we also are up to 5 different products now. So we have Fiddler Everywhere, we have Fiddler Cap, we have Fiddler Jam, and then Fiddler Core. And they do nicely fit together depending on your use case or your needs. And it's nice that you kind of have this unified tool chain for web debugging and troubleshooting if you should need it.
Yeah, and it is so useful when it comes to developer productivity, or I mean other types of application stacks and support, which we'll talk about, to just kind of look under the network stack. Don't ever be in doubt. It's here, and I've used Fiddler Classic on Windows like forever, and it's not going away. It's just fine, and we just keep on adding more things to it. But I'm also on a Mac a lot these days, so I'm so glad that we rewrote Fiddler from scratch to make it Fiddler Everywhere, working on Mac, working on Linux. I'm excited about that. But you, Eve, seem to be very excited about kind of taking Fiddler's functionality beyond just the developers into your users. So what's going on with Fiddler Cap and Jam?
So Fiddler Jam coincided with the R2 release, and it recently moved, I think it was just the end of last week, from a closed trial to an open trial. And what's new about this particular solution is that it comes with a Chrome extension for users as well as a web portal for the support agents that support them. So what it provides is an amazing way to reduce that back and forth, quickly get down, resolve, find the bugs, don't miss any of those details that typically happen when you have to instruct end users to follow very technical steps or to recreate things or download and installers. Yeah. None of that, is applicable here.
Yeah,
so
and then
really
Fiddler Cap still works, but I mean, yes. This is the problem that you're trying to describe here. Like it's really hard. You have a barrier between you and your customers. Like they're not sharing enough. It's hard to follow, and the customer gets frustrated, and they don't give you all the information. It's just a back and forth, right? And you want to cut down on this for productivity of your support teams. So what can we do about it? Here's Fiddler Jam. I just love the new mascot, Eve. Yes. It is so cool. So cool, the new Fiddler mascot. So never miss a detail. We are here to help with troubleshooting. So what is Fiddler Jam? I'll let you walk us through here, Eve.
So I covered a little bit of it earlier, but it is a troubleshooting solution that really streamlines that process of sharing logs from the end users. And what's really neat about this particular solution is that one thing, it's easy, but it's secure. And that is a big, thing that people have to be conscious of, especially in the enterprises or even at the small level, that you don't have to share any unneeded context.
That's true. That's true. Because sometimes, like, if you're not careful, like if you're capturing everything, then you are getting a lot of sensitive stuff about people's sessions and their sign-ons. So you want to be doing it as easily as possible, but yet keep it secure. Right. Yes. So how does Fiddler Jam kind of narrow in on the problem? You have like 3 aspects of this, right? You have the end user, the support team, and then the dev team, right? So how do they work together?
Yeah, I like this particular illustration because it kind of tells that story of what that handoff is, right? So you start with this end user who has a problem, reaches out to your support team. They're kind of that first level contact to gather that information, and then they can use Fiddler Jam to gather that. Now, lots of times they might be able to rectify it on their own, being that first line of support. But if not, they have the option to pass it off to the developer team without, again, the different type of back and forth, but still This provides a collaboration system. And this is really neat how Fiddler Everywhere then fits in here too. If the developer needs to dive further into the issue, they can use Fiddler Everywhere. And that seamlessly integrates with Fiddler Jam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you had a graphic, or maybe it's coming up, but this has been in closed trial. And so like you said, like Fiddler family kind of overlaps into different of these personas as to how you're using it. But are these some of the things that folks are saying when they use the Fiddler Jam?
Yeah, these are direct quotes. And I think that's always a good testament to what problem the product is actually solving. And so these are from real users, and I think they would resonate with a lot of the viewers out there who may be finding themselves in similar situations.
Yeah,
like we talked one about like the worried about the repercussions if customers send them sensitive data or the higher response rate. You know, one thing we understand about support teams is they have some immense expectations as well as high KPIs and CSATs and deliverables that they need to hit upon. And this is a tool that helps them do that while creating more time in their job for other things besides that tedious part.
Yeah, absolutely. So is Fiddler Jam now out for an open trial?
Yes. Yep. So you can go to the website and you can request, enter your information and start that trial. It's a 14-day trial.
Nice. Nice. So I like this graphic here that you had that really kind of talks through those three personas and how they overlap. Mm-hmm. So like you talked about, you have the customer and the support teams starting out to use Fiddler Jam. So easy, just get all the information. And then if you have to dig deeper, then the dev teams don't need to do anything else. It's just the same logs that they're looking at, same captures that they're looking at. They get to open it up, QA or dev teams in Fiddler Everywhere and get the full story of what exactly is going on. So when your customers tell you that something isn't working for your web or desktop apps, you should not be in any doubt. You can find out quickly.
Right.
Very cool. So anything else to add before maybe we try looking at this?
No, I think let's go ahead.
Okay. All right. And Eve asked me to be praying to the demo gods and see if I can pull this off. So let us try. Let us do a quick try. Nothing like being live on a webinar and changing things with your network proxy sometimes, but we'll be fine. What's the worst that will happen? So folks, head out to Fiddler here. That's going to walk us through all the things that we talked about. That is Fiddler Everywhere, which is completely redone. Fiddler Classic stays with Windows. Fiddler Jam is the one we are talking about. And if I can show you something real quick, let me watch my time. We're just nearing an hour, so we should be good. This is the thing where Fiddler Everywhere actually does become a full network proxy for every network traffic going in and out of your machine. And I'm sharing this connection between like two computers while we are doing a webinar. So we shall see how long this takes. You might see a little blip, but yeah, we're back. So Fiddler Everywhere is here and it's trying to sign me in. And we have a little kind of menu here. The first time you launch it, it kind of walks you through all the different parts of the UI, where is what, and you have some in-app tutorials that you can walk through. It's nice. And Fiddler, the thing that you're mentioning here, Eve, is really grown up to a point where it's more for teams. It's not just about an individual developer doing it. It's about sharing sessions and sharing requests and responses, right? Yeah. And
the collaboration has been a big focus as we extend the features and functionality of Fiddler Everywhere.
Yeah, and again, like when I'm working in a team, like the things like the composer are super important because I get to create an API, I get to have parameters, I get to write my API and then have my team test it. And also, like when we talk about Fiddler, the features that really stand out, I mean, sure, it'll do network captures, but it's the autoresponder where you get to make a request, have a response and record that, and then Fiddler will play it back for you happily. And it'll let you look inside HTTPS traffic with a little bit of certs. So this is nice. And you can see like just on this machine itself, like I have call outs to Apple and iCloud and other things that are going on my machine. So let me try something a little crazy. I'm not sure if this will work, but let me try. So what I'm trying to do here is pull up my iOS simulator. And the benefit here is since this is a network proxy, is not just for our web apps anymore, because this really is going one level down. Everything is going through it. So you can see the moment I launch iOS a simulator or a desktop, anything that you're doing, it captures everything. So let me see if this might work. So if I go out to, oh, this one's actually pulling up GitHub, and you can see that request right there. You see that? So this, let me go into the inspector. So that is a request from Safari on my iOS device, and I can do it for any other desktop. This one is an HTTPS, so it's saying, hey, you need to get a cert, so you can show that there's a server hello handshake happening. So literally everything that you see is right here, and it's capturing it for everything that's going on your device as a network proxy. That's the big benefit you get with Fiddler Everywhere. So yeah.
And one nice thing too, if you click on those ellipses, there's some amazing filtering features in here. So you can filter the information, and really, the ellipsis right at the top.
Oh, this is going to be fun too. Oh, I see these ones here. Processes. Yes. Oh, nice. Nice.
So there are some amazing filters. You can really narrow in specifically what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You know, and define what those parameters are.
Show me the iOS traffic. Don't show me all of the other stuff. Yes. Which gets to be a lot. Like if you run Fiddler Everywhere nonstop, it's going to capture everything. That's a lot of traffic. So that's amazing. So give this a spin, folks. This is Fiddler Everywhere. Works on, like it says, everywhere. Works on Windows. Works on Mac. Works on Linux. Fiddler Classic. That's your jam on Windows. Keep on using it. So that's Fiddler. But let me show you the other thing here. So this is Fiddler Jam. So if you are on Chrome, there's an extensions kind of marketplace where you can go get your extensions, search for Fiddler Jam, and it's right there. It just shows up right here as a little thing that says, hey, I know how to capture, and we are careful as to what we capture here. It is only on the tab that you want. We're not going to capture your 1,000 tabs that are open, just the ones that you want. Just the ones for your application here. So I like showing off kind of some of the really high traffic things with modern web. I like picking on CNN, which again, nothing wrong. That's what every modern web app does. But if I pull up CNN here, and if I turn on Fiddler Cap and say, or Fiddler Jam here and say, apparently I was looking at some grills here. You can see that it's starting to capture. And I will do, I'll do a refresh here. So it's still capturing all of that stuff. And something like a busy site like this, it is just hundreds of requests to kind of pull up all of the images, everything that knows. And apparently I've been searching on fried chicken as well. So we're going to stop capture because the ads keep obviously following you around. But once you're done, you get a link, and you can password protect this link, and then you get to get the link. We are uploading that session really quick, copy that link over, and we head out to jam.fiddler. We just pasted that session. And now you're going to see pretty much exactly what Fiddler Everywhere showed you, just in a more lightweight fashion right here on the web, right? So you didn't have to do anything. Your users did not have to install anything on their machines. You just gave them an extension, they captured it, and then they get to just send it over, right? You can just copy a link, and that's it.
And the portal is a real feature of Fiddler Jam. You know, being able to look at these capture logs, and you can look at the header info and the cookies and all of those additional context details that you may need to determine where the issue lies.
Yeah, and Fiddler gets you thinking, like, what are these calls that I'm making on my machine? But this one is just for that one website that we did. And again, you can look through the request and response bodies. You can add it to a workspace, which is a Fiddler Teams feature, where as a team you can add sessions and request responses to a workspace. So you get to save it and take a look at that. You can download it, you can upload it, and the best part here is little button here, open in Fiddler. So when this link finally gets to the dev team and they want to dig a little deeper as to what's going on with the user session, they get to just open this link up in Fiddler, and then it's full fidelity Fiddler as you expected. So did I say all of that thing right with Fiddler Jam?
I mean, you did great, Sam. You're great. I mean, it's hard to follow. You know, Rick nailed his 30-second challenge.
It is hard to follow.
Great on the Fiddler, so we're doing well.
Yeah. All right. So bottom line is there is a lot happening. I'm going to get away from my fried chicken here and get you back to Fiddler. take a look at this whole family here, Fiddler Jam in particular, that's new. There's a lot to Fiddler now. It's a full family of products. Yes, you can keep using it the way you are, but again, think about your team's productivity. You don't want to ship bugs, you want to ship solutions and being able to quickly get to the core of the problem, and that's where Fiddler really helps. So Eve, thank you to you and the whole team for doing all that you do with Fiddler. So anything else you want to mention?
I just appreciate the time. We did publish a roadmap last week for Fiddler Everywhere, so there's some great things on there that I know will be of interest, including dark themes. That's always gets people excited, as well as HTTP2 support. So there's probably a dozen items on that list. I'd recommend going and checking that out. There's probably something on there that will relate to you. I think the biggest thing I'm understanding is that Fiddler does so much more than people realize. So take a look, and see what problems it can solve for you, because there probably is a solution, within the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And dark modes are eating the world, aren't they? It's everywhere. Which again, the dark modes are important for like accessibility reasons. So I get that. And when I'm doing like demos, I will often switch to dark mode. But just when I'm by myself, I'm happy with my light mode for the most part. I know like Rick and a lot of others go full on dark mode, but it's good that we're giving choices to people. So, all right, thank you, Eve. And I know, Eve, you have a full team of folks. So thank you, Fiddler team, for...
Yes, I'll pass that along.
Yeah, for recreating the Fiddler message and making it so much productive for everybody. So thank you. Thank you so much, Eve. Yeah, all right, so let's move on to what is next here, and Test Studio. So I'm going to ask Andy here to come back on with me. Otherwise, I'm going to get lonely. Hey, Andy.
Hey, Sam.
All right. So thank you for waiting patiently while we talked about reporting in Fiddler, but this is all your jam. This is, wait a second, if I can stop the automatic things to go, we can come back to this. So I'll give you this and walk us through what is happening in the world of Telerik testing and Test Studio and Test Studio Dev editions.
We've had a lot of great performance increase and ease of use. I think we've been known as having an ease of use with Test Studio for test automation, creation, and maintenance for years. What we're really working on now in 2021 and into 2022 is more ease of use. We have so many features, it's hard to show everybody all the features. So we're trying to make it more intuitive as to where to find things and put those into workflows that people better understand. So in doing so, we're redesigning things like the recorder, making it more efficient, more high performant. Also adding in more recently headless browser testing execution, which I'll be able to show you, and also PDF testing. Now, formerly we had some ability to use OCR. We still have OCR capabilities to draw text from images, and previously we had to use that OCR function to draw text from PDFs if we wanted to verify PDF outputs and things like that. But now we've introduced desktop local file PDF automation, which is really incredible. It basically makes the PDF surface something that's completely automatable, including the paging and the verifications of anything in there. So two really cool features that we've come out with recently here, and excited to show everyone.
Absolutely. But maybe I might ask you, Andy, to maybe take a step back here and kind of like tell us Test Studio, what is it overall, and where does like the Dev Studio edition come in? What are we talking about here? Yeah,
so we do have really I always call it a workshop for test automation, and you've got different points of entry in this workshop too. You may have a Visual Studio plugin for Test Studio Dev Edition, where our developers might be in Visual Studio all day and they need to create and craft and manage and maintain some tests. They can do that with the Visual Studio plugin. Also, we have our standalone environment, where really you've got a choice and a spectrum between technical and non-technical testing and the types of users that approach testing. So sometimes our non-technical QAs and BAs might be using codeless testing in the standalone environment, working on the same source control project through GitHub or through Azure or something like that, with developers collaborating on the same testing and taking what typically is manual and making it something that's automatable, and then even more so, maybe even headless and very efficient part that can be included in CI/CD integration as well.
Hmm. So like anytime we talk about like headless or like test automation, I always like naturally think the web, but I also see like desktop here, like
That's right.
WPF.
We do have WPF application testing as well. Really, really great WPF application testing with Test Studio. So those desktop applications that you're working with, and really, I think one of the big challenges is customers come to us saying, we cannot keep up with the pace by doing manual testing anymore. We need to put it into an automated format so that we can go faster. And that's something that we've definitely seen as a trend across WPF as well as all the web technologies too that we support.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So let me move forward. So that's a lot of things you have support for. That's a lot.
Yeah, really. Yeah. I mean, anything in the web, and we've added. I should mention too, API testing. We actually have API testing too for REST and web services, and I've even heard that SOAP services can now start to work with that as well. So really some great technologies that you can exercise and make sure your applications are healthy, make sure everything's running, make sure you haven't introduced any regressions, and to get those new builds out there faster, safer.
And this, when I look at this, like this is the bread and butter of enterprise workflows. Like if you are doing Windows desktop, you're doing WPF, and if you're doing anything ASP.NET, it looks like you have coverage from web forms to MVC to core, and even some of the latest things like with Blazor, obviously, but also JavaScript. Like if you do Angular, React, and SPA, any of those things, jQuery isn't dead anywhere. So looks like we got coverage for just about everything here. Sweet. So the REST API things, that is pretty sweet. And when you talk about REST API, like you're talking about the automation of the testing, right?
Correct. Where you can, and Test Studio is known for being able to capture, record, and execute pretty cleanly with some, additional options to add assertions and things like that. So we do that in web, we do that in desktop, we do that also in API. We give you that ability to capture the API calls, and also go in and instrument those, put variables into them, or you could construct those API calls from just point and click kind of options, or you could use Fiddler, capture that API traffic and import it into Test Studio. Test Studio is built on some of the Fiddler and Fiddler core capabilities. So lots of flexibility. You can always code it too. We do talk about having codeless capabilities, but keep in mind at the base of Test Studio, it's a .NET-based testing framework. You have C# and VB.NET that you can use, and you can code it all if you wanted to.
Yeah, awesome. I actually want to see some of this stuff, but let me see what else you had on your slides. But this is interesting. This is DevOps, right? And I think the whole cycle has just come so much closer in the last couple of years. It's not the developer versus QA versus managerial or kind of deployment type roles. It's all one together, one big family, right?
Yeah, it really has. You look at the cycle, and we talk to a lot of teams that say we've got to have extra cycles for testing, or we've had to delay a release for testing. And if you're doing it right, testing's a part of each cycle, right? As you're developing that piece, you're also testing it, and you're also testing everything else you've built to make sure you haven't regressed at all. So automation is pretty key in that. And really a tool like ours, you're integrating to source control, you're integrating to debug tracking. We create a feedback loop between QA and developer that allows them to easily communicate when there's an issue. And really brings everybody together. We say, brings everybody together at the same table, and not just the people involved, but also the environment, right? The things that you're working with, like development pipelines and Azure and other source controls and things like that you're working with too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And let me ask you on that one last thing you mentioned. When you talk about those pipelines, the CI/CD pipelines, are you talking about actually checking in the automated tests or the headless tests in the pipeline itself?
Yeah, it's usually both. In fact, what we've seen as a trend is a lot of our customers, headless definitely fits very well in CI/CD pipeline. Typically, we'll see some of the high-level tests run first in a deployment, possibly headlessly, and then we'll see more advanced functional execution. So usually those first type of smoke tests are, hey, did everything deploy correctly? Is everything where it should be? Is everything there? And then the functional tests come along, and those also you could look at as regression tests. And that's where you're seeing it execute and exercise the application to make sure functionally everything is working correctly. Both of those types of tests can be run headlessly. So, if you really want the speed and agility to keep up, you can really take something that's basically created in a manual way. And when I say that, traditionally you hit record and you execute a manual test, and now you've got an automated test that you can from that point on execute either headed or headlessly. So it's a real big jump start, and it's also a cultural shift too. I won't overstate that. That it's not something you just pick up and start running with. There's a cultural shift here where you really have to be ready to automate. You have to be able to invest in automation, not just in the tool like Test Studio, but also in your team, and making sure that they can put in place an automation process and sustain it, right? Because that's where you're really going to see the benefits.
Well said. Well said. All right. So now Test Studio runs a little like maybe off-brand compared to the Telerik and Kindergarten releases. So you had a release maybe a little earlier than ours, and then
That's
you have
right,
one maybe coming up. Okay.
We did have one, I believe it was back in March, and then we have our next big release at the middle of July, probably. We do put out service packs in between, and we actually may have one next week where we do introduce new features in those service packs too, and also updated browser support. So we're always keeping up with the browsers, and even though our official releases are around 3 or 4 a year, our internal builds we make available to our customers too. So if you choose to, you can get those internal builds more frequently. Make sure you're staying up to date on the latest browser updates as well.
Yeah, which by itself is not a small ask to keep on top of all of the evergreen browsers and all of their features. Yeah, so sounds like this release, like headless browser testing and PDF testing were the big things. So I'm just trying to go through and see if you had anything else. Oh, you actually had an explanation of what these things are.
Yeah, so basically, the headless, it skips the browser. It executes 3 times as fast typically, and which is great. And what's nice too is it doesn't interfere. So traditional headed testing or headful testing opens the browser, works and exercises the application like a real user would. So you get very accurate tests in that case. And what we've done with headless is this can be actually run while you're doing other things. When you're running headful tests, you have to kind of let go of the keyboard and mouse and let the computer take over. And for this reason, we do have runtime agents. Oftentimes we'll have test lists going and running on another machine, maybe virtual machines. But what's one of the nice things about headless is I can go start an execution and not give up my mouse and keyboard, continue working on something else. So it's really not just the speed, but the efficiency gain that you get from having headless is just really profound.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've seen you talk about this, but it's just so amazing when you can just like spin up something headless and it just completes so much quicker. I'm excited to see that again. And yeah, so these are the many benefits that you already talked about. So up to 3 times faster. Increase efficiency, reduce time to market. Yeah, all of that is true. And these things, like you said, like can be a part of your every build cycle, build and refresh cycle. You run these things automatically.
Yeah, right. A lot of times while you're asleep, the tests are executing. And this is part of that cultural shift. This means you can wake up and focus on the failures instead of waking up and starting the testing,
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have Test Studio Chrome headless testing, and it looks like you have a few browser engines that you support, regression scripts, zero coding. But this one you said like you can get into coding if you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely. We have some customers that just love our framework and want to code against it. So certainly you can script everything. What we really have found to be a trend lately is more and more customers coming to us saying we want to reduce testing code and we want to empower the non-technical manual QAs and business analysts that know the application, that know the workflows, know the customers, empower them to be able to be part of the process. And so that's kind of back to the everybody has a seat at the table. So we have a workshop where both of those, either technical or non-technical users, can come in and contribute to the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also mentioned PDF testing. This is where you are generating the PDF and testing the content in it?
Well, yeah, so PDF testing, in many cases, you're dealing with canvases and SVGs, things that typically for a test automation tool become a black box. And you don't get to see inside of that. Traditionally, thinking a couple years ago, where we may have a PDF web viewer come up and Test Studio can't read the data inside that PDF.
Yeah.
And many test tools, fell in the same bucket. What we've done is we've added the ability to actually open that PDF up in a way that it can actually see inside of that PDF and see inside those canvas environments. Same is true for, we've seen, some extensive support that Test Studio has provided also for like testing in Tableau, or testing those more data viz types of tools as well. So not just PDF, but PDF's cool, but also extending that capability in more of those canvas and SVG kind of technologies too.
Do you know if this is using our document processing libraries?
I don't know for sure. I'd have to defer to the team to.
No, that's fine. I mean, I just love some of this stuff that we do, because for the Telerik and Kenda UI suite families, we have a whole separate thing called document processing, which, like you said, like PDFs and spreadsheets and Word documents are such a key part of enterprise workflows, and it's a black box. You just never know what's in it. But with those like document processing libraries, we can actually go inside those docs, be able to create and render and effectively manipulate those things all on the fly within your .NET or your JavaScript app. So I'm really fond of that.
Yep.
Yeah. And what's the? No, sorry, I was going to ask, like, what's an RPA need?
RPA, so that's really robotic process automation. We've had a number of customers who have implemented Test Studio using it for RPA. You get the benefits of, again, being able to have both non-technical and technical users who may create and maintain the workflows that you want to automate. But RPA is less about automating a QA process and more about automating any other process, right? So we've got some university customers that do massive data entry from spreadsheet to program, and they basically have used Test Studio, plugged the spreadsheet into a test, and it automates all of that data entry for them that was being done manually. So there's a really big market for RPA, and even though we call it Test Studio, it's definitely something we'd like to put that thought in front of people's minds. We do have a lot of flexibility that allows us to act as RPA as well.
Absolutely. Awesome. So what else do you have? I'm actually very curious to see the demos you got to show. So you got PDF content validation. Oh, nice. You're actually going through the content and just checking things off, or whether elements are visible and they're in the right place or not. It's awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
Nice.
That's right. Nice. There's that. Plus, there's the OCR. OCR is kind of how we used to do PDFs and work with things. Now it's become something still very powerful, because OCR can take, again, back to like a data viz graphical layout of data. If you wanted to extract some textual content from that image, that's where OCR is really cool. And inside of those black box areas where we couldn't see, that's where OCR was actually allowing us to do some extraction and translation. So now we really have both. We have that OCR functionality in case, but the PDF capabilities have been more expanded, so we don't even need to do the OCR most of the times.
Nice. Okay. All right. Time for demos. Andy, I will give you the control here so you can show us some magical stuff.
Awesome.
Let me find you here real quick. There you go.
Let me find my toolbar. There we go. All right. Let me know when my screen's coming up.
And it's up. Yep.
Awesome. Well, one request I've been getting recently is people want to see results, right? And that's actually where tests, that's what people care about at the end of the day, are the results. And whether or not, we can hit the snooze button in the morning and get a couple more minutes of sleep, or whether it's important that we get up right away and fix the glitch, right? So this this I'm bringing to your attention. It's a newer feature. We call it the Executive Dashboard. It's a web-based UI that allows you to see at a glance the last 10 test list executions of your test list from your scheduling or CI/CD kind of process. So in this case, I can very easily see this top priority test list had 2 passes and a failure. And through this web interface, I can drill down into and see the details of which step executed, which sub-test, and as you can see, very complex test like this one. And I could get all the way down to that step that failed and view all of this without having a license to Test Studio. So we really wanted to make this available and an item where you're going into your retrospectives or you're going into your sprint planning meetings and you're bringing up this kind of view of the health of your application at a glance, right? And that's really what it turns into. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of customers and seeing this in their environments, and it's really exciting as you see tests created and see the application stabilized over time, and all of a sudden you get test lists that are just completely green. It's the little things, right? But it's so exciting to hear really giddiness in the voice of development teams when they reach this phenomenon. And this is what I call the end of the rainbow. This is where people want to get test list firing while they're sleeping and results coming in, and then basically coming in and viewing those results and determining, hey, do I need to communicate this? Is this a bug? And being able to submit that directly into the bug tracking system. So transitioning back here to Test Studio's standalone environment, as I mentioned, we also have the Visual Studio plugin showing off the dark theme, right? A theme of today's presentation.
Sure, bring it on.
So here we go. Dark theme is here with Test Studio as well. And yeah, what I've got open here, I was working on some PDF testing here and also some Blazor testing. So if you're hungry or thirsty for some coffee here, I'm going to bring up a Blazor app and just show you, first of all, this is a test that's kind of been under construction for a little bit. And this is the type of format that we produce just by hitting record and interacting with the application. Test Studio captures the elements, organizes them centrally in an element repository. It captures the image of the elements too, so that it can use that in case it can't find the element with a find logic. The image is used to locate that. And that's actually something we have a patent pending on currently, that combination of find logic and element image to locate elements, which means we're not looking at a path, we're not looking at an index, we're actually doing a more sophisticated work to go find the element wherever the element exists. So this means Test Studio tests don't break when your application is responsive, or when your resolution is different, or when you go from one browser to the next. All of those things are accomplished by having a very sophisticated kind of find logic under the hood and having a backup of the image to do that as well. So this is the type of test that we see from Test Studio. You can see checkmark steps for our assertions or verifications here, including image verifications, as well as text content verifications. All of these are very easy to expand and edit and change properties on. And this is really what keeps Test Studio working well over time, is that these tests are very robust and they're easy to maintain. We're not just generating code. We certainly can, but one of the advantages here is that non-technical users have access to all of these settings, and these settings as well, even further settings over here, things like data driving, things like encryption, many things that change the way the test behaves and interacts with the application, and all of these really representing things you don't have to do through code, right? So we try to elevate things that are important to our users into these properties so they can even do more without needing to turn their test into a code, which then may become a burden on the whole project at that point. So this is the typical type of test you would see from Test Studio.
Yeah,
So let me show you how this executes here. We'll just run, as you can see, there's an if-else in here. We have the conditional logic options. There's really a lot of features and capabilities here to reuse tests in a modular way using test to step. or even call API test from our Test Studio API project and execute those along with your web project. So if you feel like having some API calls in the midst of that test, certainly you can do that. Here you could see that PDF testing capability. Just a lot of stuff that's just built in that you can grab and throw into your test, from dialogue handling, conditional if, else, and while loops, and actions and verifications. So lots of things here. I'm actually going to use a technique called run to here. This will jump into a certain spot in the test. So if you wanted to add some new steps to a test or re-record something, run to here is really great to get into a recording mode and a troubleshooting mode, really. Once we do that, we'll actually be able to do some record and execution on the fly as well.
So run to here, like, does that work for headless only, or are you talking about like full-on execution where it's just going to run all the way until that?
Yep, it's full-on execution. We'll watch it, and I have annotations enabled, so we see this red and yellow highlighting, kind of giving us a play-by-play here. And here we have dynamic grid, updating a product name, it looks like. And this is a headed test, right? So hands off the keyboard, right? I can run this headlessly. Of course, you wouldn't see it happening in the headless mode, but that would be the faster way of executing if we want to do it that way. So this is a Blazor coffee app. Different components here. We've got drop-down selection, and you can actually see in the dialog, in the annotations, it recognizes Telerik Blazor drop-down list, right? Telerik Blazor list, for example. You'll see those names because Test Studio is actually recognizing our own components. So here we're actually in live record mode. Our recording toolbar is attached, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording for a moment just to go back to Test Studio, and we can see 18 out of 18 test steps passed. We can look at the log file and see I'm using Edge Chromium. So this is really steps to reproduce the issue. We capture all that for you. Here we had the if else, right? So if that theme span existed, it was true, it did exist, so it went down the if branch, else it would have gone down the else branch. And so that's why we see it didn't go this else way. But really cool capabilities that, again, didn't require any code to accomplish. We see that took like 49 seconds to complete that. And as I mentioned, we're in the live record mode, so I can actually continue recording and building tests at that part of the test at this point. I want to show you something. When I turn on this element highlighting tool here, really powerful part of Test Studio, this is where we're able to create our verifications. This is also where you'll see some of our translators built in and how they work with Test Studio. The translators, as you can see, there's an HTML. This is more of a generic layer here. So, it doesn't kick in the translator for that. But these other layers, it does, right? The grid layer here, and if we go up, we can see we've got data item count verification, select item count. We can tell if the grid is groupable or not, or sortable. These are settings that are set when you deploy and develop the grid, that we can verify without even having to exercise the grid. So these are some bonus features that when you are using one of our controls, our translators give you that, not just ability to automate, but some advanced verification options as well. Now we do work with third-party and custom controls too, but with our own, you get some bonus capabilities.
Yeah, happy things happen when you stay within the family.
That's right, that's right. So yeah, lots of great stuff here. You can quickly create test steps, do all sorts of things. I mean, in fact, there's even another level here. If we were to, let's say, go down to build step, we open up our advanced recording toolbar. So you have record and playback, just like, do what a user does. You have the highlighter that helps you do some quick and easy verifications to make your test more robust. And then you have advanced recording toolbar to do even more stuff. Image verification, text from images in here as well. This is where that OCR can come into play. Stylistic verifications too. So really, we've covered all the options here, and even more actions, drag and drops and hoverovers, and name it. The list goes on and on, basically.
Yeah, no, I love it all. And did you have an example of a headless demo? Because I
Yeah,
love seeing you just fly, how quickly it is.
yeah. What's great about these functional web tests that we're creating without code can be run in either way. So when I click execute, I can choose which browser I want to execute on it, and here you can see the headless option as well. We will be expanding. Right now it's Chrome headless. We will be expanding on that for other browsers like the Edge Chromium headless as well. And I should mention this is running now, although you can't see it running, but here you can see in the debugger it is going.
Yeah, it's nice that it doesn't take over your mouse and keyboard. And if you show like the headed tests to like my parents, they're gonna get spooked out. Like, what's happening to my computer? Somebody has taken over. But this is just doing the same thing without showing you that it's doing all the things.
That's right. Yeah, and it can also be done on our test list. So at the end of the day, the test execution you've seen is where we're designing, where we're troubleshooting and debugging. At the end of the day, we're going to put those tests in a list, and those lists may be scheduled to run with our scheduler. They also may be executed from the CI/CD. So oftentimes when we are integrating to CI/CD, it's a call to our runner to start up, and it's a call to say, hey, run this list of regression tests or run this list of tests. And oh, by the way, spit out this format of results and put it over here. So those are kind of the general thoughts of how we integrate. But here in the test list settings, we give you the ability, and as you can see, I've actually taken this test list and said I want it to run on both the Chrome headed and the Chrome headless execution there. But you have these many of these settings here in your test list settings. Even something else to point out while we're here, recording, right? So if you are sleeping and your tests are running, you may want to go back and look at something. You can actually have it record video of the execution. And one setting I really like to point out is the on fail, right? That way we're not just keeping recordings of passing tests, we're destroying those, but keeping the recordings of the failed tests. So you have that option too. So that way if you needed to, you could go back and see the execution happening on your screen. Lots of cool features in here.
Yeah, test automation is like such a whole world by itself. There's just so much to do and so many aspects of different browsers and their engines that you have to keep in mind. Yeah, this is amazing stuff. Yeah, I love it, Andy. Anything else you want to show off? I got some questions here that we might try answering.
Oh, my pleasure. I think I didn't get to show you the PDF. Let me jump into one of those real quick. Believe, let's see, this one here we'll work with. So this is a purely PDF test. So you may build a PDF step into a test, and that again comes from our step builder common menu where you have this open PDF step. You would add that to your test. This particular test, so a traditional workflow might have a quote generation process, and then at the end of it, the quote's created in PDF format. That workflow could now include not just the web interface exercise to generate the quote, but also the reading of the quote to make sure it all ended up correctly, right? So that's how that can fit into a workflow. This particular test, I've started right out of the box by opening a PDF. So this just goes into a PDF right away. And so let me actually just run to here. So this is using a desktop PDF. It does put it into a web viewer. So that's the trick here, is that we're taking a local file and saying, let's put it into a web viewer, but not just any web viewer, one we can interact with and one we can read inside of. So here it goes, opening up this PDF, and then you can see it's actually typing in page 10 up there, navigating to a particular page of the PDF. And here we are in the record mode. So I've executed and now I'm recording. So if I wanted to, I could start clicking on things and it will capture that. If I wanted to maybe even go to next page, it will capture that. But let me do this. Let me give you a view of this PDF through Test Studio's lens. And the way we do that is we turn on that element highlighter, because traditionally PDFs would be looking at like this. We'd be kind of stuck with, okay, here's this black box that we can't see inside of. Let's go and do build step and use our OCR. But now with this PDF integration, you can see that it can highlight all of these individual lines and information and get in here and actually see and validate that information, as well as interact with the PDF viewer and use like scrolling and all sorts of things that you might work with in a PDF traditionally. So here we can do, hey, let's make sure this element is visible. And actually, since this is an image, this is one area where I might actually go and borrow our OCR. So that text from image here, we can try that and see that it says that it's extracting that. And we can add that step as well. So you got that combination of not just being able to interact with these elements like a full web page traditionally would be, but also you have that OCR still too. So just in case there's an area that still seems out of bounds, like, and this is great, this is a graphic, but actually Test Studio does see each of these components, so we do have visibility to those. But let's say if that was just something in the image, that's where we could use that OCR and still get to the text and validate inside of that.
Yeah, this is amazing stuff. I love it. I love that we're able to do so much within a PDF, and again, like you showed off, like using an OCR if we have to, but for the most part, we should be able to just go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So we have like 18 minutes left, and there's a couple of things I want to talk about with JustMock, and I actually missed a few questions while Eve was on, so I want to bring her back on just because I don't think I know some of the Q&A parts, just to kind of read out loud. But Andy, before you go, just a couple of quick questions for you. How are the docs for Test Studio? If I'm a new user, do you walk me through all of this?
That's a great question, Sam. Actually, inside of Test Studio, you've got access to user guides, how-to videos, forums, and also our feedback portal and our ticketing system. Even in a trial situation, you can use and try out our support. And keep that in mind, it's a commercial product with commercial support done by our engineering team. But on top of that, in our docs, there's certainly a lot of data here and a lot of information, you know, as far, for example, as like build server automation and coded samples if you needed to. But I also wanted to point out, since you gave me the mic one more time, we do offer lots of training. So you can do either self-paced training through our virtual classroom or instructor-led training with one of my team members or partners. And even up to the point of staff augmentation. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not just a tool you're buying, it's a cultural change, it's a difference when you step into automation. So we're not just gonna give you a tool and let you try it all on your own. We have definitely support all the way through, as well as up to that staff augmentation. So if you need our help to get things off the ground and running, we could certainly do that for you.
Yeah, I love that. And you kind of answered the other thing I was going to ask. So Sarah sees in the Q&A chat room, looks like they're familiar with Test Studio, so thank you for using it. And the question was like, what exactly is a good automation test? Like, how do I learn? And I think you're pointing at a lot of resources here, Andy, that we can kind of try stepping somebody through the process and try to make things that are not brittle.
That's exactly right. And I would definitely recommend checking out the virtual classroom. The classes there are free, and you can really get a lot of insights from those.
Awesome. Andy, thank you so very much. I would not be able to do anywhere close to the kind of demos that you can pull off with Test Studio. So it's so good to have you and kind of walk us through. Thank you so much, Andy. Excellent. And I can take control over, and I see Eve pop in. So thank you so much, Eve, for coming back.
No problem.
Because there are a couple of things I would have tried answering, but I honestly don't know. So I know you may have already answered it, or maybe somebody else in the Q&A has, but these are good for, I suppose, a lot of folks to know and for me to know. So let me go back to some of the Q&A for Fiddler that we missed. So Fiddler Jam is awesome, which we just saw. But that's for Chrome, right? So it is a similar engine with Chromium on Edge, but what's our story?
I'll have to get back to you on what that story is.
Yeah, and again, I feel like we might be close because like we have the engine, but it's Edge is a different game. So yeah, yes. Like Andy was saying as well, sometimes these different browsers bring in different things. Then somebody was asking about, Michael Wells was asking about the Fiddler requirement now to have you signed in. Do you know anything about if that is all across Fiddler Everywhere, or What if it comes in the middle of like any firewalls?
So I think he's maybe referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you have to sign in to use the product.
Yeah.
So that is the actual installer. Right now, there is no workaround on the sign-in.
Okay.
Because that is
All right.
dependent, one, on the product itself, as well as the admin section and the licensing. So they're tied together.
Sure, that's understandable. And Michael, please feel free to reach us anywhere else. Like, give us a very unique question that you might have as to like what is preventing you with some of the firewalls. So we'll be happy to work with you.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So Fiddler is on its is a thing of its own, right, Eve? Like, do you know? I mean, this may be things bigger than you and me, but where does Fiddler fit with the rest of DevCraft?
So, I mean, they're complementary products. We do have a lot of users that are using DevCraft who also use a Fiddler product. There is no real separation in terms of like if you use DevCraft, you can't use Fiddler. But I would think of them as complementary products, and we are seeing that with a lot of our larger users.
Yeah. Very cool, very cool. Sorry, I just didn't know if Fiddler Jam worked everywhere, so I just wanted your feedback real quick. So thank you for hopping on.
No problem.
All right, folks, we have like 10 more minutes left, and I'm going to try. Let's see if are you still seeing my screen? Yes, you are. And actually, the testing team had a quick poll. So can we launch the poll one more time, please? This is the last one. There you go. What are some of the most common reasons for delays in your testing cycle? Okay, and you got a few options here. I think they speak to a lot of things that you heard Andy talk about, the things we are trying to address with headless testing, as well as when you go into black boxes like the PDF. Are your test executions slow? Is it flaky? Is it regression testing? More manual? How much of it is coded? Testing not integrated with your build CI/CD pipelines? So folks, get to chime in real quick. Going once, going twice, going thrice, and done. Okay. I'm actually curious to see what you all say. Oh, look at that. Build automated tests from scratch to cover new features. That is, yeah, that is what takes a lot of time. And test execution being slow is also there, but regression testing is done manually. That is also a big chunk. So, you know, that speaks to what the reality is for a lot of enterprises. But I think what Andy was trying to say, like it's a mindset change. Like you have to be on board in trying to get these things to be automated a little bit more. And it's not going to happen overnight, but if you slowly start taking the steps to start automating some of your test cases, then you can slowly get away from your regression testing being entirely manual. And then, yes, the taking the time to write those tests, I think what Sarah was trying to say in the chat room as well, it takes a little bit of finesse to figure out what is brittle and what is not. And yes, the headless execution and these being able to stop a test and being able to interact with it, all of these things really help. So yeah, a lot of good stuff here. Thank you, folks, for being interactive on the polls. So I have like 10 minutes left here, less than 10 minutes, but I'm going to try to quickly go over something else, which I'm not the best person to do the demos, but I can show you what it means. So I am talking about JustMock here, and this has been around for I'm told like 10 plus or more years, and ever since pretty much like C# has come along with .NET 3.0 and onwards, we have had this, and it's great when you come to think about the unit testing we write before we start shipping products. It's to give you more confidence, right? And JustMock has always been around to help developers write those mocking. I mean, it's a great mocking tool to help with your unit tests, because if you think about modern apps that we are writing, so much of that is calling out to services, making database requests, doing all types of integrations with other parts of your app ecosystem. And there are just times when you don't have all of that, or you don't want to have all of that when you're writing your unit tests. You want isolation, and that's where JustMock really comes in, trying to mock out all the different things that you can kind of not have to deal with it when you're running your unit tests. So the debugging capabilities when it comes to specific objects, being able to mock just about everything in your code, public, non-public members, or even things in MS4lib. The perfect tool for unit testing your .NET code, whether you're dealing with complex and hard to maintain legacy apps, as well as things that are you're writing with very integration with services. Code coverage is big. We kind of talked about this with testing as well. And there are multiple aspects of this, right? Code coverage, it's not just the automated testing, the UI testing, it's also about unit testing your code. And this is big, and all it does is just gives you more confidence as you are shipping stuff cycle after cycle to know what exactly you might be breaking and making sure you're not breaking those things. So please take a look at JustMock. There's a dedicated team that pours out love every release, and a lot of things have happened in the last few releases. I've seen the team kind of really do a lot of UX enhancements to make sure you are comfortable. There's obviously the profiler, which kind of runs your unit tests and making sure your mocked objects are taken care of right. We have been continuously pouring in effort to make sure things can be optimized. We know exactly how to clean up now. You don't have to mark things manually as much. It's just a better filtration, just a faster execution. It's all about speed of execution, as it is with like automated headless tests. We have a debug window, which is the one that shows you all the information about your mocking, and now it also shows you arguments that went into your mocked objects, so you know exactly where things are succeeding versus failing. And we also had issues where if you're using JustMock and your trial expired, you were not sure how some of the menus just stopped working, so that there's just a better UX now. We tell you what you can and cannot do. So continual love from the JustMock team. This is Mihail Vladov, we call him Misho, and his team that just churns out love every release. And the big news here is, again, kind of staying on the latest and cutting edge stuff. We have things working for .NET Framework. We have things for .NET Core and .NET 5, but .NET 6 is coming along nicely. We are at Preview 3, which is the latest version. So you can see that we are really bleeding edge and future facing when it comes to support. We have things working with .NET 6 Preview 3, which is the latest publicly available preview that you can grab. Preview 4 is coming up hopefully next week with Microsoft Build. So no matter what type of .NET code you write, JustMock is here to help. I will actually have Misho back on. It's kind of getting late in Sofia, Bulgaria, which is where our engineering teams are. But I'll have him back on tomorrow to kind of show us a little bit more of a in-depth demo with JustMock. I can show you some of the basic things, but he's the man to talk to. So we will have him on tomorrow to talk a little bit more about JustMock. But I think he may have had a question here that he left for us. So the JustMock team has a quick poll here for you about unit testing. What is the thing that you dislike the most? To understand and cover all possible scenarios, to set up your mock data and mock objects, legacy code that's just too hard, writing comprehensive unit test suites, which again, it's a technical debt by itself, because your unit tests also need to be updated. And writing unit tests is plain damn boring, but it's so important for us to have coverage and confidence as we ship apps. So folks, take a look at this really quick and just tell us what your biggest pain points are. And I'm sure the JustMock team would love to know and kind of do more to see if we can help with your pain points. And I know there are big things coming in the roadmap where we're going to be able to automate a lot of the things with your unit tests and mocking objects. So I'm sure the team is really looking forward to your feedback. So going once, going twice, going thrice, and done. Done. Let me check your responses here. Haha, that is so on point. Writing unit tests is hard. It takes a lot of effort, absolutely. And legacy code is hard. There are parts of your app ecosystem or code bases that you are just scared to touch. So absolutely. But you know what? Sometimes when the things are difficult, things that we are scared to touch are the ones we have to go into. to have more confidence and start building up that muscle that we're not breaking things with legacy software. So thank you, folks, for the interactions here. The teams are always very curious to know how you all respond to these polls. So I think that's a lot of speaking for the last 2 hours. Thank you, folks, for hanging out here with me and the whole team here. If you folks are around, which again, it's everyone here is busy and they have been gracious to join me, but Eve and Andy and Rick, if you're still around, feel free to come back on and we can close things out. Yeah, there, Andy is still here. So is Rick. Let's see. I think we got through most of the Q&A. Are you folks seeing anything that I may have missed? Rick, folks really want your Duck and Stooges demo, so we have to push it further.
Well, we built it together step by step, so anyone who wants it can review the recording and create it, right along with me.
Exactly, and I think we are doing another Twitch stream tomorrow where we might take a different look. We have covered this a couple of times now. We might actually create something from scratch and have a little fun with it. Anything else, folks, that you see in the Q&A panel that you want to answer? Anything that I may have missed? I don't see anything else pressing, but Sarah sees, Michael Wells, thanks for tuning in and asking some good questions here. Yeah, I don't see anything else. Good stuff. Either we have made people very hungry, it's almost lunchtime here, or we have done a really good job. We don't know which one. But thank you, folks, for hanging out with us. So we appreciate your time. It's been a long 2 hours, but hopefully, I'm really happy that we take the time to talk about these things, because when we club all of this together with our UI component suites, we just have to rush through all of it. So Rick and Andy and Eve, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come and talk through all of this stuff. So thank you. So folks, those are our social handles. So again, you know how to find us, you know how to find the teams. Start with the Telerik Twitter handles and we'll get you to the right place. There is support for you to help out, and there are forums. So please don't be stuck, and let's all be more productive. So thank you all. And like I said, come and join us on Twitch. We are, like normal weeks, we are on Twitch a lot, like 5 or 8 shows that go on anyways. But this week, we are explicitly taking the time to talk about the release. This afternoon, it's going to be my good friends Alyssa and TJ and Carl from the PM team to talk about Angular and React. And then tomorrow is going to be one more session on productivity, one more session on .NET tools. So come and hang out with us whenever your time permits. But otherwise, that's it. That's it from me and Andy and Rick and Eve. Thank you so much for joining, and we shall see you next time. Stay healthy, stay productive, and be happy. All right. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.